Das Radical.
So, it is not very often that I read an Icelandic news story that just infuriates me. But recently there was an article on vísi.is that did exactly that. So listen to this headline here. Ferðamenn notuðu salernið meðan bóndinn brá sér í sturtu, which translates to tourists used the bathroom while the farmer was in the shower. Yes, this is a thing that happens in Iceland apparently nowadays. You know, and actually when I first read the story, the first thing I actually thought was, oh great, it's one of those stories, because, well, I haven't heard of something exactly like this. This is an ongoing problem in Iceland nowadays, with tourists just encroaching into, well, people's private lives for some reason. Now, about the bathroom situation though, it has to be said that, well, you know, there are a lot of long stretches of highway in Iceland where there are no good chances to use the bathroom. Here's the thing, us Icelanders, we've been very used to it. If you're traveling to, say, from Reykjavik or some other very long way, we know that there are only so many stops along the way where you can use the bathroom. So, you know, we just know when we stop at a certain town or whatever, like, hey, does anybody need to go to the bathroom? Because no more bathrooms for another 200 kilometers. So we're used to that kind of stuff. But apparently a lot of these tourists aren't, so there's been a lot of problems all over Iceland with tourists just going to the bathroom wherever, basically. So local governments have tried to combat this situation by setting up portable potties all over, and I guess that has helped. But pro travel tip, if you come to Iceland, use every possible chance to go to the bathroom if you can, or else you need to, you know, train yourself to get some Icelandic travel bladder and bowel discipline in order to safely and cleanly travel around here. So there's a farmer in eastern Rangárþing in southern Iceland. Her name is Vilborg Alda Jónsdóttir. She lives pretty close to Highway 1, and tourists often stop to take pictures of her horses. She has a horse farm. This is pretty common all around Iceland. You know, you'll see some farm animals frolicking around. Tourists will stop, take pictures. You know, that's usual stuff. That happens all over, not just in Iceland. And so far, no harm done, you know. But, yeah, but a lot of Icelandic farmers that live especially close to Highway 1 and other areas where a lot of tourists travel around have seen, well, an increase in tourists basically encroaching onto their property without permission and doing things that they shouldn't do. So the highlight of this is when said farmer Vilborg was taking a shower. She heard someone knocking at the door and she figured, well, whatever, just some more tourists, and she didn't feel like going out of the shower to greet them. Then she could overhear, while she's still in the shower, that said tourist entered her home and went to the other bathroom and used it. And then she came out of the shower, obviously not fully dressed, and like these tourists were there. And stop and think for a moment. Who does that? Who just enters a random person's house just to use the bathroom? I mean, how badly did these guys have to go?
Well, he ain't gonna poop in the yard. I mean, he'd go inside to do that.
Not if his door is locked.
Hey! God, I gotta go!
Ridiculous. Now, this is probably on the extreme end of negative tourist local interactions here in Iceland, but Vilborg also says that, and this is something that Vilborg is not far from being the only horse farmer that has to deal with this. Often tourists will stop and, you know, take pictures of the horses. The horses will come over to the fence, you know, because they're naturally curious, they want to be petted, and then people will start feeding them. Now think about that. If you're just in a city or wherever and somebody is out walking their dog, and maybe they'll let you pet the dog or whatever other animals they may have walking, you know, a pet pig maybe. would you just all of a sudden start feeding somebody's dog without asking permission? No! And the same thing goes for horses. Sure, they're not pets, but they're still farm animals. They require a certain diet in their life. And, they can't just be fed random things willy-nilly. I mean, okay, doing that once or twice would be okay. But when is a constant stream of tourists and everybody stops to feed the horses, well, here's the thing. This is something that's been going on in Iceland for a few years now, is that farmers have had to put horses down because they were being overly fed, like baked goods and other things that are not so good for the digestive systems, that made them sick, or they became overly fat and thus became, well, bad at riding horses. Basically, the tourists made them bad at being horses, so they had to be put down. God, this is so depressing. I mean, sure, eventually everything dies and horses will make good riding horses are turned into delicious steaks anyway, but bottom line is, don't feed other people's animals. That should be just a very common sense rule to any animal that someone else owns. Now, if it's a wild animal, it's a different story. Like if you go whale watching in Iceland, yeah, try that. Go whale watching in Iceland and try feeding one of the whales. That will make us impressed if you can do that. That'd be awesome. Feeding a horse, everybody can do that. Oh, I get it. Like, you see beautiful Icelandic horses just frolicking around in the Icelandic picturesque landscape, and you want to pet them, you want to take pictures with them, you want to take selfies with them, and then you feel the natural urge to feed them. Don't do it! Vilborg also talked about how the feeding situation with the horses had gotten so bad that she decided to set up an extra fence. So I guess she probably had a normal wire / barbed wire fence, between the road and, the horses. And, people would stop at the fence and, feed them and stuff. So they set up an extra layer of fence within the previous fence to make sure that there's a barrier where the, tourists and horses can't touch each other. And this worked for a while, to some extent, until a lot of tourists started bringing their drones to then film the horses more efficiently. You may think, hey, what's wrong with that? I mean, it means I stay at the right side of the fence and the horses on this side, and I get a few pictures. But yeah, apparently she has a problem with the horses getting afraid of said drones, and then they run all over the place, and Arna has to say she's about to collect some of the horses for training or whatever. It's now then much more difficult for her to find them because the drones have made them scared and make them run all over the place. Apparently Vilborg has even asked the local police whether or not she would be allowed to shoot down the drones that the tourists bring, which to me just sounds absolutely hilarious. I mean, could you imagine that some tourists show up, out of their rental car, from China or America or Canada or wherever, and, they see those, nice horses frolicking around, and they, release their drone, want to take some beautiful, footage of them, and then on the horizon, a farmer shows up and just goes, BAM! It'd be hilarious. Although I would not support such a practice out of obvious gun safety concerns, but the thought itself is still pretty hilarious. But yeah, another day in Iceland where tourists just don't respect personal property and normal boundaries of where to be and where not to be, and and this is the reason why so many Icelanders hate tourists. But yeah, if you ever come to Iceland, I'm not saying don't come to Iceland, I'm saying come to Iceland if you want to, but, respect people's properties, respect people's animals, and don't go to bathrooms in other people's houses. What's fucking wrong with you? But yeah. Thanks for watching, I am Johan Phoenix, and have a nice day.
Das Radikal.